The hangar didn't breathe. 227 airmen stood locked in place as Brigadier General Marcus Reddan's hand hovered inches from Lieutenant Kara Holt's chest. His polished boots gleamed under the floodlights, but his composure cracked with every tremor in that raised palm. It wasn't a gesture. It was a threat delivered in front of the entire Stonehaven Air Base. Kara's stance never shifted. Her visor mirrored the one-star general's fury, but her boots stayed rooted. She wasn't fearless, only trained to meet fear head-on. And she wanted every witness here to see it wasn't her escalating this moment. It was him. Flashback earlier that morning. Reddan had strutted through the hangar like a man rehearsing a promotion speech. He praised discipline, boasted of Stonehaven's flawless record, hammered home the number he wanted etched into every report, a 100% readiness rate. It was his ticket to a second star, proof to the Pentagon that his command was untouchable, until Kara bent beneath the wing of an F-16 and ruined the script. Her sharp eyes caught a fissure in a hydraulic line, a hairline fracture nearly invisible unless you'd flown sorties with pressure bleeding out mid-combat. But Kara had Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria. She knew what overlooked flaws cost pilots buried. Missions lost. She rose, her voice steady but firm. "Sir, this aircraft isn't safe for sortie. The hydraulic system is compromised. It needs grounding before flight." The hangar hushed. Every airman shifted, eyes flicking from the general to the lieutenant. Everyone knew what grounding meant: downtime. Paperwork, a black mark across the spotless readiness record. Reddan's jaw clenched. "Lieutenant, do you understand what you're saying?" "I do, sir, and the checklist agrees with me." That was the spark, not arrogance, not defiance, truth. Truth loud enough to smear the shine off his perfect record. His reply came with theatrical contempt, a dismissive wave, a mutter about junior officers nitpicking, but beneath the act. Something cracked. This wasn't just a blemish on paper. It was a challenge to his authority, to his control. Back to now. His hand trembled above her like a hammer waiting to fall. The turbines outside wailed faintly, but inside the hangar silence pressed like lead. A crew chief's knuckles went white around his helmet. A weapons tech whispered, "Is he really going to?" But the rest of the words died in his throat. Reddan leaned in, his breath acrid with coffee, eyes burning with humiliation disguised as rage. "You think you can embarrass me in front of my wing? You think your checklist outranks command?" Kara's pulse thundered, but her breathing stayed level. She wanted every witness to see she hadn't moved first. He had. The general's shoulders squared. The last flicker of restraint drained from his eyes. And in that breath before impact, every soul in Stonehaven knew something irreversible was about to happen. Before we continue, drop a comment telling us where you're watching from, and don't forget to hit subscribe so you won't miss what comes next. This is Stories Unseen, and the moment is only just beginning. The hangar felt like it was shrinking, steel beams pressing down on every breath. Brigadier General Marcus Reddan stood inches from Kara Holt, jaw tight, his voice a low growl that carried to the back rows of the formation. "You think pointing out a scratch on one coolant line makes you smarter than command?" Kara's boots stayed planted, her tone even, with respect. "Sir, that coolant line would have failed on takeoff. A pilot would have been dead before clearing the tower." Murmurs rippled through the ranks. A crew chief shifted his weight. Helmet clutched tighter. Reddan's eyes narrowed. "Dead don't play dramatics. Lieutenant, you embarrassed me in front of my air wing over nothing." "Sir," Kara said, chin high, "I didn't embarrass you. Ignoring the checklist would have embarrassed all of us in the after-action report with a casualty column." The words stung. The hangar seemed to lean closer. Reddan's lips curled. "You dare to lecture me? I've commanded wings since before you learned to salute." Kara didn't blink. "Then you know better than anyone that the checklist isn't a suggestion. It's the law we fly by." A sharp inhale rippled through the formation. She'd thrown his own doctrine back at him. Reddan's face flushed red, neck stiff. He stepped closer, so near she could smell the starch in his uniform. His voice rose, slicing the silence. "Your mouth is writing checks your wings can't cash, Lieutenant!" Kara matched his stare. Her voice was calm, but it carried. "And your pride is gambling with lives you swore to protect." That line hit like shrapnel. Several airmen looked down, afraid their faces might betray agreement. Reddan's composure cracked. He bent, snatched her flight checklist tablet from under the F-16 and slammed it to the floor. The glass shattered in a spiderweb of light. Gasps rippled. A weapons tech muttered, "That's not protocol. That's personal." Reddan loomed over Kara, teeth clenched. "You will not undermine me in front of my formation. You will not." Kara's pulse pounded, but her voice stayed level. "I don't undermine you, sir. I uphold the standard, the one you taught them." She gestured slightly toward the rows of airmen. "They all heard it from you." That was the strike he couldn't absorb. His authority, thrown back at him in front of 227 witnesses. His hand rose, sharp and sudden, not to point, not to gesture, but to shove. Every witness saw it. The raised palm, the forward lean, the intent, clear as a strike order. The hangar went rigid, every muscle drawn tight. One young pilot whispered, "He's really going to," but stopped as if the words themselves were dangerous. Reddan's shoulders squared, his shadow swallowing hers. The last flicker of restraint drained from his eyes, and as his hand lunged forward, the entire air wing understood when it landed. Stonehaven would never be the same. For a heartbeat. The hangar existed in slow motion. Brigadier General Marcus Reddan's hand lunged forward, palm open, the weight of his rank behind it. 227 airmen felt the air shift, saw the breach of distance. The moment authority became assault, Kara Holt moved. Her left hand shot up, faster than instinct, faster than thought, fingers clamping around his wrist before it struck her chest. Years of combatives drilled on mats and hangar floors snapped into muscle memory. Pivot, step through, leverage. The sequence unfolded with surgical precision. Reddan's momentum, meant to drive her backward, became his downfall. Kara twisted, shifted her weight, and his wrist bent against the joint. Snap. The sound sliced through the hangar like a rifle crack. Not deafening, but sharp enough to freeze every breath in the room. Reddan's knees buckled, boots squealing against steel as he dropped. A one-star general, the man who had ruled this wing with fear and reputation, was now on the deck, face contorted in pain. Gasps rippled across the formation. A crew chief's helmet slipped from his fingers and clattered. A weapons tech covered her mouth, whispering. She just stopped him. The words hung like smoke no one dared clear. Kara released immediately, stepping back with deliberate control. No rage, no flourish, only restraint. Her chest rose steady, her posture flawless, her eyes locked forward. "No unsafe jet flies today," she said. The words weren't loud, but they carried. They cut through silence and lodged in every ear. For a moment, the axis of respect shifted. It no longer flowed toward the silver star on Reddan's collar. It bent toward the lieutenant who had stood her ground without hesitation. Reddan clutched his wrist, face pale. Humiliation burned hotter than pain. Through clenched teeth he hissed, "You'll pay for this! Holt, you'll never fly again!" But no one echoed him. Not a single nod. Not a single laugh. The hangar didn't mirror his authority anymore. It mirrored Kara's calm defiance. Silence pressed down heavier than jet fuel. Somewhere in the back, a young airman muttered. She grounded a general. The phrase leapt like static, whispered from mouth to mouth until it pulsed through the ranks. Kara's gaze swept across the formation. Eyes widened, not with fear, but with something more dangerous recognition. They had seen what she had seen. They would not forget. Her pulse still hammered. She knew better than to think this was over. Generals like Reddan don't crawl quietly. Men like him don't swallow humiliation, they come back harder. But in this moment, on this steel floor, the equation had flipped. She hadn't escalated, he had. She hadn't attacked, she had defended, and the proof rang in every ear. The echo of bone giving way to leverage. 227 witnesses would carry that sound with them. Kara stood tall in the silence, knowing she had not just defended herself. She had struck at the chain of command itself, and storms like that never stay inside the hangar. For a long moment, Stonehaven's main hangar was silent, but for the shuffle of boots on steel. 227 personnel stood in disbelief, watching a one-star general clutch his wrist on the floor. Fear had once made him untouchable. Now, before their eyes, his authority was broken. First Lieutenant Kara Holt didn't move, shoulders squared, jaw set. She remembered every instructor's warning: control the threat, then control yourself. So she stood tall, letting the silence do the work. The stillness cracked as medics rushed in, kits clattering. One knelt beside Brigadier General Marcus Reddan. Voice clipped, "Sir, don't move, possible fracture." Reddan's hiss carried across the hangar, half pain, half fury. His eyes locked on Kara, venomous, but the humiliation in them was louder than the rage. Kara turned and scanned the formation. Weapons techs, pilots, crew chiefs, all eyes fixed on her. She met their stares one by one. Steady as steel. Formation remains intact. No one leaves their post. It wasn't her order to give, but the ranks obeyed instantly. Helmets under arms, spines straight, eyes forward. Not because of regulation, because respect had shifted. Up on the observation deck, Major Glossman whispered. We all knew his temper would break, but not like this. His words hung heavy. On the floor, Kara bent and lifted the shattered flight tablet, setting it carefully on a cart. Protocol restored. Even if dignity wasn't, her chest rose steady. She wanted them to see she wasn't trembling, that she hadn't acted from ego but necessity. But inside, she knew the truth. Generals don't forgive humiliation, and the institution doesn't forgive broken chains of command. Reddan groaned as medics lifted him onto a stretcher. His boots squealed against the deck, his ribbons glinting under harsh light. He fixed her with one last look, voice raw. This isn't over, Lieutenant. Not by a long shot. Kara didn't respond. She didn't need to. Whispers spread instead. She grounded a general. We all saw it. The phrase passed from cluster to cluster, multiplying until it pulsed through the hangar. She felt every gaze on her as the stretcher rolled toward the ambulance outside. The desert sun spilled through the open doors, cutting long shadows across the steel. Kara stood in one of them, unflinching, knowing this was no ending. Because outside the hangar, commanders were already dialing phones, investigators would descend, and before the day was over, she wouldn't just be a lieutenant who stopped a shove. She'd be the center of a case that could ripple through the entire Air Force. The question wasn't what she had done, it was what they would do with her. And Kara Holt knew the fight for survival had only just begun. The ambulance's siren faded into the Nevada desert, carrying Brigadier General Marcus Reddan to the base hospital. But inside Stonehaven Air Base, the echo of what had happened still clung to the steel beams. 227 airmen had witnessed authority snap, and they knew history had just been written in their hangar. By nightfall, the story was already moving. Veteran forums lit up, whispers spread through secure chats, and across distant ready rooms one phrase repeated, the snap at Stonehaven. Kara Holt sat alone in her quarters, boots still dusty from the floor. Her hands, steady in the confrontation, now trembled with the weight of consequence. She hadn't come here to challenge generals or stir headlines. She had come to keep jets safe, to keep air crews alive. But destiny never asks permission. Within 72 hours, she stood before an inquiry panel. Senior officers formed a semicircle, their eyes hard. Files stacked thick. A colonel read the charge in a voice without inflection. Assaulting a superior commissioned officer. Article 90 UCMJ, but then came the evidence. Dozens of witness statements, signed and anonymous. Each told the same truth: Lieutenant Holt did not escalate. She defended herself. She defended the standard. Surveillance footage followed, grainy but clear. Reddan's shove driving forward. Kara's counter precise, controlled, ending the strike before it landed. No rage, no flourish, only restraint. Silence pressed on the room until Major General Kessler leaned forward, hands folded. His voice was calm but final. "Lieutenant Holt, what you demonstrated was not insubordination, it was discipline. You did not break the chain of command, you upheld the values that give it meaning." Relief washed through her like cool desert air. She saluted sharply. "Sir, I only did my duty." The ruling spread quickly, not as scandal, but as affirmation, quietly. Training manuals were updated with a single line under combat discipline: restraint is not weakness, it is strength under fire. Weeks later, Kara stood again before her wing, not in judgment, but in recognition. Her promotion to captain was pinned beneath the same desert sun that had lit her confrontation with Reddan. Where silence had once hung, applause now erupted. Looking across the formation, she saw the same faces who had watched that day, but their eyes carried something: new belief, not in defiance, in principle, in the certainty that no rank, however high, stood above the standard. Stonehaven returned to rhythm jets roaring, drills running, missions flying. But something deeper had shifted. Fear no longer ruled the hangar. Integrity did. Kara knew the moment would follow her for the rest of her career. Not as a scandal, but as a reminder authority is only as strong as the values it defends. She hadn't broken the chain of command. She had reforged it. And across the Air Force, Stonehaven would be remembered not for a general's fall, but for a lieutenant's stand discipline under fire, strength unshaken.